Hello, and welcome to the ONTIC Connected Intelligence Podcast. I'm Manish Mehta, ONTIC's Chief Innovation Officer. Join us as we delve into valuable insights and practical advice that will empower you to navigate the complexities of modern corporate security and risk. We're here to share knowledge from experienced leaders and innovators in the field. All right, get settled, and let's dive in. Nick Saroka is Vice President of Operations at Exlog Global, where he brings more than 2 decades of experience in special operations, crisis response, risk management, and organizational resilience. He served 8 years as a reconnaissance team leader and member in the U.S. Marine Corps, followed by nearly 13 years as a special operations operator with the U.S. Marine Corps Forces Special Operations Command. Later, he served as a senior special operations advisor for the Marine Corps, advising on complex operations, leadership, and mission readiness. Nick is passionate about developing resilient teams, integrating capabilities, and building collaborative solutions to challenging problems across diverse stakeholders. Nick, welcome to the Connected Intelligence Podcast. Great to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
So tell our audience a little bit more how you moved from the Marine Corps ultimately to Exlog in your leadership position in the role. We'd love to hear that backstory.
Yeah, definitely. I love telling the story. I won't repeat too much about what you talked about with time in the Marine Corps, but I did spend over 2 decades as a reconnaissance Marine and Marine Raider. And I had the opportunity to serve in some of the most incredible assignments across special operations and special activities. And more importantly, I had the privilege to work alongside some of the most amazing people I'll ever know, from special operators across every service to embassy, country teams, and local partners around the world. And looking back, a lot of those opportunities came because I volunteered and looked for ways that I could create value beyond what I was doing, which helped me learn the trust of my leaders and gave me the opportunity to take on some really unique missions and develop a number of outside the box concepts that may have not happened otherwise. Some are still around today, and I take pride in being a part of some of those proofs of concepts. So those experiences ultimately shaped how I lead today with an objective-based focus. But the path ultimately that led me to the private sector really began about 2 years before I was retiring. I started looking at it. There was no more promotions. I achieved every goal that I set for myself. So I started asking myself the same question that I asked after every milestone in my career was, what's next? So that took me to grad school, and where I focused many of my projects on real companies. Most importantly, Coca-Cola Company. That's where I was born and raised, so I had Coke running, the good kind of Coke running through my veins. So upon graduation, I had all these papers strategies that I had written for the Coca-Cola Company. So it was like, someone's got to find these interesting. So I found someone on LinkedIn at Coca-Cola that worked in their business threat intelligence, and I just cold called him on LinkedIn, and we started having chats about the papers that I had written, and eventually that turned into a GSOC fellowship. For those that aren't familiar with that, that's that at the end of a career, the military will continue to pay your salary while you go work for another corporation in order to bridge and help with that transition. So phenomenal opportunity working for Coca-Cola, and that completely opened my eyes to the private sector. And around that same time, I met the person who later became CEO of Exlog, the now CEO, George Taylor, former reconnaissance Marine as well. So at that time, he didn't know that I was going to be working for him, but he did give me some sound advice and told me that if I ever wanted to stand out from all the other retiring special operators, I needed to understand business. So took that advice and took a crash course in finance, economics, and business strategy through Harvard Core, its core program, and then followed up with him a couple of months later, and then he offered me a job at Exlog. So looking back, that advice has really shaped everything that I've done today at Exlog, and I've come to realize the importance of that every day that I'm in the position that I'm in. So, and really, what it boils down to is that the security alone really doesn't drive the business decisions. Organizations will make decisions based off of their operational priorities, financial impacts, and the strategic objectives. And therefore, Exlog, we have to understand each of our clients' business priorities and why they're doing what they're doing. So then we can deliver the intelligence and risk solutions that enable their business and not just protect the personnel.
Congratulations on that journey, and well done on taking advantage of those opportunities. So great to hear that. Thank you again for joining us at our ONTIC Summit. You were on our GSOC panel. We talked a lot about how do you move from just a functioning GSOC to a true COE, a center of excellence. What was unsaid, or what would you have loved to dive deeper on that would be valuable for our audience?
Yeah, definitely. And I think even after I was on that summit, I've had multiple conversations about this topic with people from the risk industry, security industry, and all across our company as well. So I think one of the biggest challenges that any global security operations center faces today is perception. So historically, as we know, that security operations centers grew out of physical security with gates and guards and access controls. They were those 24/7 teams that were on there that could respond to any type of physical security incident or breach. But if you look at the capabilities of a mature operations center, they're doing intelligence collection, threat monitoring, travel support, personnel accountability, crisis management, medical assistance, due diligence, and the list goes on and on and on. And a majority of those are not inherently security functions. They're enterprise capabilities that happen to reside within security. So coming out of the military and transitioning into this environment, it kind of stood out to me because like within the corporate sector, those support the entire business. Those responsibilities really didn't seem like security to me as well. My career as security was more force protection, access control, and polygraphs. You know, the guys that I kind of steered clear of it if I could, because usually when you had interactions with them, it meant that I was in some type of trouble. So, however, again, going back to those capabilities that we're talking about here, they belong to different staff sections: intelligence, operations, logistics, communications, medical, and overall, that operations center existed to bring those functions together. So they created that common operating picture and helped leaders make those decisions to achieve those objectives. So I started looking at, I started attending more conferences since on tech, but even prior to that, I was at GSX. And so when GSX large security conference, and if you ever been there, you notice that the exhibit hall is full of companies focusing on threat intelligence and crisis management, executive protection, travel risk, medical assistance, and so you've got a large population of vendors and individuals having these discussions at GSX. But then I attended a major enterprise risk event conference where many of those same capabilities were barely represented at the event. Even though a lot of the sessions and conversations that were being had centered around geopolitical risk, operational resilience, crisis response, business continuity. This was right at the tail end of when we were doing large extractions out of Dubai. But again, like there wasn't that same group of individuals that was there. So that got me really thinking about, hey, all of these things that are housed underneath these security GSOCs, right? They really support the entire business and not just the security aspects about it. So, have we created some artificial boundary between security and enterprise risk that really doesn't reflect how organizations actually operate? Or are there silos that are so tall between enterprise risk and security that it's preventing some of these skills or capabilities that are underneath the GSOC from being leveraged throughout the enterprise? So I think that's worth the conversation. And I'm not suggesting that organizations need to reorganize their departments and throw all these functions somewhere else. Every company has a unique structure, and whatever works for them will work for them. overall, like what I am suggesting is that we define those capabilities by where they bring value and not where they report to.
I love how you frame that. So, Nick, since you went down this path of risk management, what is the difference? What are the similarities? And how should organizations evolve their threat monitoring versus the operational risk management? Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're closely related, but overall they're not the same thing. The one is more in support than the other. So I think threat monitoring is the collection and analysis of that information. So we're identifying those threats and hazards and changes in that operating environment. Versus the risk management is understanding how those affect the organization and ability for it to achieve its objectives, and then deciding what to do about them. That's why I often think about it through the intelligence cycle. The organization establishes those objectives, which then in turn uh, transition into the security information requirements. And then we will take that information and those information requirements and collect it. So the threat monitoring. And then the next step, that analysis of that information. So how does it impact the business? And then disseminating that out to the stakeholders. And then it's up to those stakeholders to provide that feedback. But everything boils back down to those objectives that we start with in the beginning, and what the business is trying to achieve, and then building the threat monitoring plan around those objectives and what disruptions are going on, what atmosphere has changed, what conditions have changed that could potentially impact those objectives, and then you treat those through the risk management process.
Let's actually talk about intelligence in a real time situation. So, imagine a fast moving incident inside of a GSOC, and you're monitoring, and then at some point you're escalating, and at some point you're taking action. What are the tipping points to move from monitoring to escalation to then action? Just curious if you've come across those tipping points and when to make those shifts.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that you're never going to have the perfect amount of information when decisions need to be made. I think some of it comes down to what we refer to in the military as tactical patience. So, not every developing situation requires an immediate action. Sometimes the best decision that someone can make is to continue monitoring while gathering more information on it. We encounter this a lot at Exlog when we bring on new employees, and they're always asking, okay, should we escalate this or not? And the question I ask back to them is what changes if we act? And then what changes if we don't? So sometimes, ultimately, the risk of inaction is often just as important as the risk of taking an action that's on the ground. So keeping that into context of with the GSOC of get an alert coming in, what is this information actually going to provide that decision maker? So I think it's important to again understand that you're not going to have that perfect information picture, and most leaders within business or leaders in general are comfortable making decisions, but with the uncertainty, they just need to know what information is missing. So what is known about the situation, what is unknown about the situation, and overall what's being done about closing the gaps. So when a GSOC has that intelligence information and they want to escalate it out, is just being transparent about, hey, we don't have all the pieces to the puzzle right now, but we do need to start creating some awareness around this. And again, going back to let me understand exactly what the business is trying to achieve here can help enable, hey, what needs to be escalated versus what doesn't need to be escalated, and answering that question that I posed earlier about what happens if we don't escalate this. Does anything change on the ground? Is the business impacted? To if we do escalate it, what does change, and how is that going to impact the business?
We'll get back to the conversation in just a moment. But first, in the world of safety, security, and protection, we know that gathering and sharing information is crucial. That is why we created the ONTIC Resource Center as a hub for security strategies, best practices, and tools and tips to do your job more efficiently. Take a look at our articles, checklists, guides, industry frameworks, and more. Check out the link in the episode description to visit ONTIC Resources or visit ontic.cl/resources. Well, Nick, you talked a lot about business, and let's break that down. Again, the best GSOCs we've seen are nerve centers that go well beyond security. They impact facilities, HR, your supply chain, all parts of the business. And you have to become a trusted stakeholder in a GSOC to be able to do that. How can GSOCs better serve the business, to your point, and become good partners across the entire organization, including legal and operations and crisis leadership?
Yeah, I think it boils down to relationships, getting out within the business and establishing those relationships, and in order to let people know about what you're doing within the business, what capabilities that you do have, and then get that buy-in that's needed. And sometimes it's not just sharing those capabilities. It potentially it's when we talk about breaking down silos, there could be points where uh, you're going to need the top-down decision-making authority in order to help break down those silos. But having the courage and confidence to have those conversations with leadership in order for the business to best benefit from the services that the GSOC is providing. Recently had a mentor ask me is what does it take to walk into a meeting where you weren't invited to without being asked to leave. And I think it boils down to that credibility, and you're going to get the credibility from repeated performance, but also those relationships, and constantly creating value within the organization. So the same is true for GSOC. If you don't, you're not going to earn a seat at the table because of your technology or your reporting structure. You're going to earn it because people trust you in your judgment and recognize that your insights actually help them accomplish what their objectives are.
Well, Nick, business is very complicated. Often relationships are complicated. In your experience, where do you see those breakdowns occurring or the fragmentation between the monitoring, response, decision making in your experience? Curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think it's going to go down to really two places where I've seen it, and that's I keep talking about, but those organizational silos. So you've got multiple capabilities that are going on, and the enterprise risk management, the security, the intelligence, the operations, and all of those business, and they all traditionally operate independently, and everybody has a piece of the puzzle, but nobody's connecting it. That's where it sometimes breaks down is at those silos. And then again, sometimes it takes that top level leadership to align everything in order for these to be supporting each other. Because I mean, we're all competing for resources, and sometimes it's creating for credibility as well. So, who's taking ownership of this? So, how do you get different departments to work together and support each other and overall support the organization with distributing that credibility across the board? Um, and then the other one I think is important is the translation gap. Uh, uh, Decisions aren't made just because it's a threat. They're made based off of the impact to the business. So the GSOC's role is to bridge that gap by translating that information into some type of business context. So those stakeholders have an understanding of not just what's happening, but why it matters to them, and potentially what options do they have regarding the situation.
If you read the pundits, they believe AI is going to eat the world, right? AI is going to have an impact in physical security. It'll have an impact one day in the GSOC. What's your view on how that evolution will occur and then impact to personnel, impact to decision making? More curious on your opinion on how far AI will transform GSOCs.
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is inevitable going to make it, if not already, into the GSOCs. We're leveraging it right now for our internal collection and making sure that we're staying in tune with everything that's going on within the world. There's a lot of things going on, and you only have so many analysts to monitor those various situations. So it's going to need to be embraced within the GSOCs, but it can be leveraged as a force multiplier. But you're always going to need that human in the loop. If you look at the going back to the intelligence cycle and where AI fits in with that and how we've been leveraging it is you're still going to have the objectives of and collection requirements being driven. That's human is coming up with that. Uh, but as far as collecting that information and breaking down that data, AI can be leveraged to collect that information and then pull it and alert you to potential triggers. So putting in those key terms and phrases and relevant sources of information where that information is being generated out of. But then once it hits that, taking that information and understanding how it impacts the business, it comes back down to that analyst and looking at that information and saying, okay, validating that that information is true because we all know that AI likes to hallucinate sometimes. One is vetting that information, and then two is analyzing that information before disseminating out. Um, but even now going and introducing AI into that dissemination process, it can come back in. And because you can direct, hey, if this information meets this threshold, analyst vets that information, provides the context of the information. I need it to go sent out to X party. AI can automatically send that information out and the template that it needs to be sent out in. Then it goes to stakeholders, and again, the human in the loop, that audience that's receiving that information, that's the human, obviously, that is looking at that information. So AI is not in there. So I think you can kind of leverage AI where it can be implemented without wholeheartedly relying on it to tell you everything that's going on in the world at any given point in time.
And Nick, to come full circle on your career, you had amazing mentors. If you were to sit down and mentor an analyst today or an operator today, what guidance would you give them, both on the expectations of how GSOCs are transforming, obviously the tsunami of AI that's to come, and just general leadership and career growth for these roles in particular?
Yeah, I'm going to go echo George's comments to me or advice to me is separating yourself out so that you understand the business. We had an analyst that joined the company the same time I did almost 4 years ago. She got promoted multiple times within the company, and she had one of the largest clients that we had, but she really understood the business of that client and embraced how that client worked, understood how the supply chain worked for that client, understood where they were vulnerable. So she embraced everything about that client that she could without being actually in the organization, and that helped her really provide value to that organization, and again, I mean, helped us right continue our relationship with that organization. So fast forward a couple years later, a job opening opens up within that company, and because she knew that company so well and was so ingrained within it that she became a top contender for that position, which we wholeheartedly supported, like a great career growth for her. So understanding business and understanding what business you're supporting is huge. So, and how you're supporting those business objectives, I would advise any analyst or GSOC operator to take that in and embrace it. Within Exlog, when we start every employee through this 2-week training cycle, and one of the first classes we give them is risk. So understanding risk. What is the likelihood and consequence of a situation impacting an organization? But you have to understand what that organization is trying to achieve to determine what that loss could be if this impacts occur. So after we teach the class, I have them pick one of the clients off our list, and then they do a full risk analysis of that client. So they pull up the client's website, pull up their 10K, pull up their vision statements, and they really get an understanding for what the objective is that client's trying to achieve. And then they provide the risk for that client and identify the threats and hazards and potential vulnerabilities without ever stepping foot within that company. So one that gives them, hey, ties everything together, what we're doing, but it also helps them get familiar with those clients that we have. And going back to AI, I would advise people in the industry, any of the young ones, to learn it. It's not going away. So how can you best leverage it in order to support the job that you're doing? Because that's how you're going to make your growth within the industry. Even if you're not technology savvy, understanding AI can definitely help you succeed and help your organization that you're supporting of how to best leverage it.
Nick, that is terrific guidance and advice. And thank you again for joining us today on our podcast. We've got one final question for you that we ask all of our guests. What does connected intelligence mean to you?
Yeah, so it's interesting when I hear that connected intelligence. I think about how people naturally interpret information differently, and it kind of ties back into what we're talking about within a business organization. So, kind of a little bit reminds me of the theory of multiple intelligence and how we learn. And the idea isn't that one type of intelligence is better than the other. It's that people and processes and understand the world through different lenses. So if you think about an organization, security interprets information through the risk and threats lens. Operational sees it as operational impacts. HR looks at it from workforce implications. Legal sees liability and compliance. Finances see the financial exposure. So everybody within the organization has a different way of how they interpret information. So we're often looking at the same information, but translating it is different based on the responsibility that we're in. So to me, that connected intelligence is connecting those different perspectives around a common business objective.
Our guest today, Nick Saroka, VP of Operations from Exlog Global. Nick, thank you for joining us again today. Appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for listening in. To find more episodes, visit us at ontic.co/podcasts. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on your streaming platform of choice. Plus, we'll be selecting reviews to read on the show. So leave one, and you might hear yours featured in an upcoming episode. Know someone who would be a great podcast guest or have questions you'd like us to answer? Email us at podcast@ontic.co. This episode was produced by AJ McKeon. We'll talk to you next time on the Ontic Connected Intelligence Podcast.